Happy Friday, everybody. So, put out some questions on Instagram this week. The goal is for me, my goal, once again, is to try to put out some purposeful, meaningful content for you guys. Help me get better at this. One, got to do the reps to get better at it, but provide some value, education, timestamp some of my thoughts over the course of my training, running a business, coaching people. Like that's what I want to do with all this, right? Hopefully, in the process, provide some value. So, one of the questions that I got on Instagram that I thought was what resonated with me, in a very meaningful way. And I think it will with a lot of other people that we felt this. If you've been in the game, in the fitness, working out, doing that kind of stuff at any point in your life for any sustainable amount of time, should resonate with you. The question was burnout from CrossFit or feeling like you don't love it anymore and how to manage it. So honestly, that question hit me pretty hard. And it hit me hard because I've been there. And a lot of this stuff, when I'm commenting on it, it's going to come from personal experience, my insights, thoughts, and opinions. I've been at this now 20 plus years. I'll interject research when it's relevant. But a lot of this is going to be my personal experience and things I've witnessed and so forth. And this one question particularly hit me pretty hard. And that's why it's going to be the first one that I answer. I'm going to try to answer one of these questions. I got a handful of them, on a weekly basis. It's kind of the goal right now. So in my 30s, late 30s or so, around 35, let's just bookmark there. I honestly started to hate CrossFit, like hating it. I was burnt out, body hurting. I'd hurt my back. Felt like I wasn't progressing anymore. Well, not just then, but we had opened a second location. One of my kids was born. Well, at 35, both my kids were born. Life was different. Life was very different than from when I started CrossFit in my, mid to late 20s. And I didn't accept that. And my training did not take a larger look at my life and where it was at that time. I was struggling to recover. Sleep was disrupted oftentimes. Those of you guys that have had kids, that's the case. Business, responsibilities exponentially went up with 2 locations. Life was different. Everything looked different, but I still wanted to train. And then the catch-22, double-edged sword to that, is training is one of my main ways of dealing with stress. It has a massive mental health component for me. And when I'm stressed, tired, using training to overcome that. And it ended up being this major catabolic event in my life of just things not going good to where I hit a massive wall. And owning a gym, this was a hard thing for me to talk about. I'm supposed to be the motivating guy. I'm supposed to be the guy that says, this is super good for you. In reality, I'm struggling every single day. My body hurts. I don't have energy. All the things you say, you're supposed to get from your health and fitness program, I'm not having that. And I'm supposed to be the leader of that product. It was a very rough place for me to be. Not to mention going into this time, COVID was a part of all this. And it was just a very tumultuous, is that even a word? Time in my life. But it is very vividly imprinted on my brain as a time of very much burnt out on CrossFit. And then you start looking at the larger landscape of fitness. There are people now that were diehards in CrossFit, games athletes, that saw CrossFit burnout as something happening on a much larger scale, and then honestly capitalized on it. Not necessarily bad mouthing CrossFit, but capitalizing on the burnout that many people in my CrossFit generation were feeling. So yeah, I mean, good for them. I mean, they saw a business opportunity and took it. But I had to take a step back and look at things in a much more mature. I had to look at myself. I had to take a step back and I had to look at myself. Burnout happens in every training methodology, every sport, everything. If you are doing any sort of physical training exercise with intention and effort, which is what you need to move the needle forward and make progress, burnout is going to happen in any training methodology. But why does it plague CrossFit a little more than the others? And I figured it out for myself, and I think it's not a CrossFit methodology problem. Becomes a problem for the people CrossFit attracts, that it becomes our problem as individuals participating. So, CrossFit methodology, constantly varied functional movements executed at high intensity. That is the core of the methodology. Now, every CrossFit gym, everybody out there writing programming, everybody's got their own ways. I mean, I grew up in CrossFit in the generation of like Outlaw CrossFit, Victus, everybody's training for regionals. Everybody's trying to outdo each other on more weight, more load, more volume. Workouts that were being written back then were absolutely starting to get insane. Like what people were considering actual valuable, productive training was getting very out of hand. And you started to feel like in that generation that you had to do that stuff to get anywhere with CrossFit, to do anything. And that's not the core of one, how you're educated on programming in CrossFit for health and fitness, but that's not a training program for long-term health either. It is a competitive mindset that festered and blossomed during kind of one of the peak eras of CrossFit competitive atmosphere, if you will, when it came to the open regionals, the CrossFit games. I mean, there was a lot of us in our 20s that's all we lived and breathed during that time. And it was great. I mean, CrossFit was the most trendy thing in the fitness space. CrossFit gyms popping up everywhere. I happened to be one of them. It was mega. Like, it was huge. And everybody seemed to have hit a wall. But is that a fault of the methodology? Is that a fault of our own? Is that a marketing problem? The answer to that can be discussed so many different ways. You ask 5 different CrossFit gym owners, you might get 5 different responses. So for me personally, I started to become plagued with injuries, burnt out, not making progress, struggling to lead a health and fitness movement from the front. And with that, like I said earlier, I had to take a step back and look at myself in the mirror. Like, why the fuck am I doing this? And the truth is, it was 100% my fault. The way I was feeling and where I had come to was my fault. And I had to take ownership of that. It wasn't the methodology's fault. It was my approach to the methodology. So in CrossFit, in classes, intensity happens to be one of the biggest driver of results, whether you're doing bodybuilding, powerlifting, running, whatever your fitness program is. But at the core of CrossFit is intensity, constantly varied functional movements executed at high intensity. That does, and in fact, drive the results, but intensity does drive the results of damn near any fitness program to make progress. No intensity, arguably no results. Now, that does not mean every single workout, every training session needs to be maximal intensity. So, one of CrossFit's biggest strengths, but also has become one of its biggest dangers, is in the class environment, everything becomes competitive. You know, from the beginning of time, there was a whiteboard with everybody's time of the day. I mean, we still have a leaderboard. Whether or not you think it's toxic or not, it still has value. It still can be a very good tool used in the right way. But in a CrossFit class, energy, accountability, and competition tend to happen very frequently. So you get a bunch of people like myself. I consider myself to be type A personality. In that environment, every day starts to become a competition. Every day. And that's not training. Doing your sport every single day is not training. No athlete goes out and competes at baseball, football, basketball, max effort, full game intensity every single practice. But for whatever reason, when we leave our jobs, come and do a workout, this competition environment festers. Now, one side of that coin, driving that intensity when most people don't have that intensity, don't even understand it, it gives them an environment to find the best versions of themselves. But then you have a group that's attracted to CrossFit, which is like who I am. You know, I fell in love with it because of that environment, particularly. It reminded me a lot of training for wrestling, the community, the camaraderie, the support, you know, the high fives at the end of a really hard workout, the suffering together, the getting through and doing hard things together, to overcoming obstacles together, learning new skills. Like, I love it. Like, there's no other training program where I get to, even 20 years into it now, I'm still learning and developing new skills and new ways of doing things. Like, there's no boredom. Like, if you have a little ADHD going on, this is arguably one of the best programs for you, because the constantly varied functional movements executed at high intensity drives great results. It prevents you from getting bored and so forth. But on the flip side of that coin, it can drive you to complete and utter burnout, body breaking down. There becomes this like escalation where every workout becomes a test. You know, every class becomes a competition. Every day then in turn becomes max effort. Well, I learned this the hard way, and so has many other people. The body, the human body, is not meant to do that. We can't do that. Now, in our society, in our current modern day life, it's a pretty sedentary life. It's not one of full of activity, full of movement. It is pretty damn sedentary. I own a gym and I sit in this desk as a desk job a good healthy chunk of the day. So like, no matter what, we are not farming. We are not hunting, gathering. We aren't doing these things as human beings anymore. So we must move our bodies intentionally. And CrossFit provides that avenue in a very meaningful way. It does allow us to use our full body and the capabilities of our full body and to train it in a very meaningful way. And arguably, in my professional opinion, it is still the best way to train for the time you need to invest in it to get amazing results. And what I mean by that is there's not much better program design that I have stumbled across. Don't get me wrong, I love some bodybuilding. I love some powerlifting. I mean, I find myself mixing in bodybuilding more than any other thing because I do enjoy it. But when it comes to the bulk of my training, it's CrossFit. It's our Double Edge Fitness group class. That is the bulk of my training because it is the most effective and efficient way to move the needle forward on my health and fitness in a meaningful amount of time committed. An hour or less, I'm getting a great workout that is moving the needle forward on my health and fitness. Now, don't get me wrong. I go through seasons like right now where I'm training a lot for a specific event. But when the event's done, I back off into mainly just group class training. And it keeps me healthy and fit. But where we get trapped, especially the younger versions of me, was you get trapped in you always need to push more weight. If you're not pushing more weight every single day, each of your lifts improving, getting heavier every single time, you're regressing. You know, add, no matter what. More volume. You always got to do more volume. Like, more is better. You know, I happen to grow up, like, you train hard. You train harder than the next person. That's how you become a winner, right? It's just more volume, more Metcons. You know, double days. You need a strength session in the morning, conditioning in the afternoon. You need to start adding in more monostructural work. Then all of a sudden, not only do you have like a 3-hour daily time commitment to training, but is that meeting you at one, where you are currently in your life? And two, do you have the base level of fitness and health to support that level of training? Most of us get way ahead of that curve. And we end up beaten and broken and burnt out. Like, your fitness program is supposed to add value to your life on a daily basis. Like, it should give you energy. You should feel like you had a hard workout, but you shouldn't be wrecked. You shouldn't, go into every weekend needing 2 full days on the couch to recover. Like, our fitness should be facilitating to where we can go out in life and live the best life possible. My fitness facilitates that. If my son wants to go on a 20-mile mountain bike ride this week, I know I'm physically ready to do that. Like, that's what fitness is about. Not breaking our bodies, but building them. And if our program and our approach to the program isn't doing that, we need to evaluate that. A lot of this overtraining and too much intensity, it will lead to poor sleep, poor hormones. Your resting heart rate won't be recovering. HRV won't be recovering. You'll start feeling dragged down and in a bog. Not to mention, on the flip side of that, the dopamine addiction to doing high intensity becomes quite addictive. I'm guilty as all hell of that. So making sure that we're keeping these things in check and we're approaching our training from a healthy perspective. And I had to take ownership of myself and how I was approaching training. My life changed. Like, I'm 41 years old now. I have kids, activities, responsibilities. Things had to change. My daughter got really sick, ended up in the hospital. Like, things have changed. And a lot of this might sound like it would be a massive regression for me in my fitness and health. But it has actually been the single biggest jump forward for me in my fitness and health. I had to start thinking you need intensity to drive results. One of the big things that I came up with for myself, I don't know if I actually came up with it, but for myself, I came up with it. Somebody else out there might have come up with it, but it's this concept of the maximum recoverable intensity. Like, we need to train at an intensity that we are able to recover from. And I look at this on a daily training basis, on a weekly basis, monthly basis. Like, I go through now and plan out I'm training for an event, or am I just kind of maintaining right now? Do I need recovery right now? How hard can I push? And then get up and do it again the next day. Because at the end of the day, training without consistency, leads to no results. So consistency is the single most important aspect of training, any training program, period. If we can't keep consistent with it, and consistency means, 4 to 7 days per week, we need to be moving the body with intention, purposeful training. And if we're not recovering from that, and for my mental health, I tend to need to train 6 days a week, 1 full rest day per week. That keeps me kind of balanced, if you know what I mean. And since I know that about myself, I need to then treat training in a different way. I can't come into the gym every single day and full send max effort metcons, push the heaviest loads every single day. Like, I'm not going to recover from it. So I really started paying attention to how I train. Did I get a good workout in? Going to move the needle forward on my health fitness? And am I going to be able to recover from it the next day? That's the big question. And once I started dialing that in, everything started getting better and better and better. Another aspect of CrossFit, especially for those of us aging, you might have to give some shit up. I have some injuries from earlier, not just my CrossFit years, but sports in general, that kept kind of showing their face. Shoulder separation, handful of times in this shoulder. I have a low back injury that started, Lord knows when, but it got very exemplified in a CrossFit competition once that put me out for a couple years of pain and unhappiness. There are certain things that I've had to give up. I no longer can back squat maximal weights and maximal intensities. I have to be very intentional with how I squat for my back. My back is pretty much pain-free now. For my shoulder, squat snatching, cycling squat snatches, heavy or light volume, tend to set my shoulder down a very bad road to where I was in pain, sometimes weeks at a time. I had to decide, are these things adding to my long-term vision of my long-term health and fitness? Or are these things slowing that down? I'm not training to make it to any CrossFit games. I'm not training for any of that shit. I'm training to be a badass grandfather and to live a healthy, quality life. Like, I want every day of my life to feel good for the most part. I mean, that's just impossible for every day, but I want to feel good as I'm aging. Now I want my 50s to be great. I want my 60s to be great. I want my 70s to be great. And then my 80s, I want to be great, but you never know when your ticket's going to get punched. In doing that, I need to train smart. So I had to give some shit up to limit pain, reduce risk of injury. Squat snatching, heavy back squatting are two things that I am very mindful of and oftentimes scale around. That's fine. A lot of people struggle with that. It's okay to scale. It's okay to adjust the strength based on where your physiology is at either this chapter of your life or acutely if something's going on. You need to learn how to train around injuries properly and be okay with that. Right? It is part of training. It's fine. Getting obsessed about my recovery, once I started seeing the results from approaching each day with training intensity that I can recover from, I've said it over and over again, if you haven't heard it before, but, after my daughter's hospital deal with her Crohn's disease, we overhauled our diet. We had a pretty healthy diet, but it wasn't a perfect diet. And then we overhauled our diet and made it perfect. It was pretty mind-blowing to me about 3 to 6 months into this overhaul, how insanely good my body was feeling. At this point, I had already started TRT, so that was already in my system. I'm not going to get into that right now, but there's a laundry list of years of where I came to the conclusion heading into my 40th year of life of why I decided that hormone replacement therapy, and with what I'm trying to get out of my life and my health and my vitality and, you know, feeling good, it was a responsible decision that my wife, who is my medical consigliere, not my provider, but we decided that was the path for me to go. And it was life changing for me in a very meaningful way. But the big thing came 3 to 6 months into this diet overhaul of how powerful I saw being extremely consistent with eating high quality, whole, unprocessed food in a very meaningful way, day in, day out, no cheats, no breaks from the diet, no alcohol. Like, my recovery started improving even dramatically more. And when you're recovering from it, from your training like that, your training by default starts getting better and you start recovering from it better. So reflecting back on all this, it wasn't a CrossFit methodology issue. It was my approach to CrossFit methodology and how I was recovering from the methodology during certain chapters of my life. When you're in your early 20s, you can get away with damn near anything. You treat your body like shit, eating, training wise, still make progress, get away with anything. 30 came, mid 30s, kids, life, things changing. It's fucking different. It's just different. And you have to be okay with that. And with that change and things getting different, if you want to continue down a path of excellence into your midlife, you need to start taking ultimate responsibility for your daily actions in your health and fitness. And that's where I had come to. I want to be the fittest, healthiest version of myself. And in that process, I want to do it feeling good. I want to do it feeling like I enjoy what I do every day. So I had to take personal ownership of that. I had to stop competing. Every day being a competition. Now, don't get me wrong, I still like to mix it up. Minimum 1 day a week, maximum 2 days, but 1 day a week, I get after a workout with maximal effort and intensity. Most of the other days are just good training days, that I can still recover from. That's been built upon and stacked upon for years. That has led me to this point at age 41 that I'll say it, I'm the fittest, healthiest I've ever been in my life. From blood work to what I do in the gym, to how I feel outside the gym, to my daily feeling of vitality, energy, happiness with my life. It's all top notch right now. And I'm proud of it. I've done the work. I've put in the work. And I want everybody to have it. But you have to look at your life, how you approach things, and it's most likely not the training methodology's problem. It's your problem. And if we can embrace that, start peeling the layers back, we can start then making very meaningful progress into many chapters of our lives, but particularly our health and fitness one. At the end of the day, CrossFit still works. The fittest people I know, the healthiest people I know do CrossFit every single day. Granted, I'm surrounded by it. I see it, but I'm also not blind to the fact that CrossFit and people's approach to it has also burnt people out. Intensity still matters. I don't care what your training methodology in. If you don't dabble with intensity, you're not going to get the progress that you're looking for. Training hard still matters. A lot of this over the past few years, it's like, quote unquote, a pussification of training. Like, we need to back off, be easy, be gentle. No, you still need to train hard. And like I said, I don't care what the training methodology is. It has to be hard and intentional. And competition can be healthy. But we don't and cannot and should not compete every single day at everything. just not going to be long-term. Your ego will destroy sustainability, right? But sustainability drives long-term results. Consistency is king. So we got to keep our egos in check. We got to train smart because consistency is the most important piece to this. And if we aren't able to sustain consistency, we aren't going to get the long-term results. It's that simple. Each day in the gym shouldn't be the goal to survive and get through the workout. Our goal should be to build a body and a mind that is capable, physically capable and healthy for decades. That is our daily goal. With that, it's going to be soreness, going to be workouts that like, damn, that was hard. I might be messed up for a few days. That's going to be sprinkled in there. But in general, our training program should lead us to a place of daily, weekly, monthly health and fitness personal growth that's both good for our brain and our body. And we should be able to recognize that on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. Okay? I want you guys to remember, intensity is a tool. It should not become your identity. You do not need to win every single workout to have a great training session. Shit, you don't need to win any workouts to have a great training session. You need to do the best for you and have a great training session meeting you where you're at. You cannot out-train accumulated stress on the body. Training puts stress on the body. If you don't recover from it, training harder isn't going to facilitate recovering from the stress. I'm literally going through this right now in this moment. I've been training really hard for the Reno Tahoe Odyssey, our 6-person team, and I'm starting to hit that excessive training point where my current running capabilities are hitting their limits, and I need to recover from that for the event. Like, you have to be aware of accumulated stress, and recovering from that means rest and backing off intensity, right? Another thing to remember is your body doesn't give a shit where the stress comes from. Stress coming from kids, work, whatever. Wherever the stress is coming from in your life, if it's causing you mental stress, it is going to affect your body. The gym stress, although good for you and can help mitigate the mental stress, it can all be accumulative. You can't just keep writing checks that your body can't cash. You have to be mindful and intentional with the whole process. Now, just because you can redline a workout every single day doesn't mean you should. Max pain in a workout doesn't mean you're being the most effective of that workout, right? Sustainability, consistency with intentional intensity beats all the max effort shit every single time, beats the excessive volume, the excessive intensity every single time. So your one goal with any training program, but particularly CrossFit, is going to be maximal recoverable intensity and efforts with good intentional training. And doing that as consistently as humanly possible. My experience, 3 days is the bare minimum to move the needle forward. But if you can get your recovery, lifestyle, and training habits dialed, and you start moving that up to 5 days, 6 days per week, arguably everybody needs a full rest day. But you start moving that needle up, your fitness will continuously improve over time. And so will your health, right? Last thing I want to mention here, we are in a social media age where everybody is training on a camera, right? Everybody's doing the best workouts, the best program, getting the best results from their program. Everybody's doing everything perfect. It's not true. All right. And you have to stop comparing yourself to those people, even if what they're doing has gotten them those results. Like, for instance, for me, what I'm doing has in fact got me these results. It's not a lie. All right. I do it in public in front of people, hundreds of people every day and week. But on social media, stop comparing yourself. Stop being sucked into the next flashy thing. Find something you love to do, whatever that is, whatever fitness program that is. You have to enjoy it, because if you don't enjoy it, you won't keep it sustainable. I happen to really enjoy every aspect of CrossFit. I enjoy coaching it. I enjoy programming it. I enjoy doing it. And because it's enjoyable for me, and now that I'm approaching it with much more maturity and responsibility, it is growing me in the way CrossFit methodology is meant to grow and develop somebody, both mentally and physically. There's nothing to prove to anybody but yourself. And if every single day you can wake up and try to just be a little better than yourself from the previous day, that is the only competition that you should be having. You do that on repeat for weeks, months, and years, you're going to be miles ahead of everybody you thought you were competing against. And it'll be irrelevant to you, because all of a sudden you're just competing with yourself and you're leaving everything else behind. You guys, I appreciate the question. I really want to give these some good thought and some, hopefully some meaningful answers based on my personal experience. Being burnt out on various things is various chapters of any aspect of life. I think I laid out my experience on how I was burnt out with CrossFit. And I tend to believe that's going to resonate with a lot of people. Just remember, oftentimes it's not necessarily the program's fault, it's your approach to the program. The first place to look is at yourself in the mirror. Once you've done that, and it is extremely valuable to sit down with a coach and go through what you're feeling, how you're feeling, and come up with a plan to overcome being burnt out, being on a plateau. This happens to all of us. Anybody that's done anything meaningful with their lives, or has worked hard in training, or has trained or built a body, like, it happens. It's inevitable. And when that comes, be surrounded by a community, have people in your corner that you can lean into and, use to help you and guide you through that. You guys here at the gym, Double Edge, I'm happy to meet with you anytime on any of these topics. Those of you that find us out in social media land, come and sign up at the gym. That's where you're going to get the best help from me. But I am going to try to educate, inspire, and entertain through this stuff more often. And yeah, so this is the first question. You guys, more questions, more thoughts. When I put them on Instagram, put them on there, put them in the comments of this video, whatever, just tell me. And I'm looking forward to aggregating this stuff together. And yeah, let's keep kicking ass. And I love you guys. See you in the next one.